The streetlights in Roswell have always flickered in that particular way. Never quite dying, never quite steady. Like they can't make up their minds about whether to keep watch or look away. I noticed this for the first time 3 weeks ago, the same night I started working the late shift at the hospital. My name is Abigail Foster, and I'm a radiology technician, and there is nothing remotely interesting about the route I walk from the bus stop to my apartment on Canyon Drive. It's 4 blocks, straight down Main, left on 5th, left on Oak. 8 minutes if I walk with purpose, 12 if I'm exhausted and dragging my feet the way I was that Thursday evening, 9:30 on the dot, a full 14-hour shift still humming through my bones and making everything feel like I'm moving through water. I was thinking about the Hendricks case, the old man with the tumor they'd found in his pancreas, the kind of thing that changes everything about a family in the space of one 5-minute conversation. When I first felt it, that prickling sensation at the back of my neck, the same instinct that makes you glance at your phone when you know no one's called. I didn't see anything, not then, but I felt footsteps behind me, measured and deliberate, matching my exact rhythm with an accuracy that should have been impossible. I turned. Nothing. The sidewalk behind me stretched empty to the intersection, lit by that sickly orange glow of municipal lighting that makes everything look like it's already dead. I told myself it was just the wind, just exhaustion, just my mind playing tricks because I'd been staring at screens all day and my eyes were tired. I quickened my pace and pretended I believed that lie all the way home, checking over my shoulder 3 more times before I reached my building, seeing nothing each time, but feeling that presence like a weight on my chest. Something changed in me after that night. I started paying attention to the small things, the way shadows fell at certain hours, the specific corners where the streetlight pools ended and the dark began, the places where you couldn't see what was waiting for you. I told myself I was being more careful, more aware, but really I was just more afraid, and fear has a way of making you see things that aren't there, or maybe seeing things that have always been there, but you've trained yourself not to notice. The second night, the footsteps came again. Same time, 9:30 something, same measured rhythm behind me, like a metronome made of darkness and intent. I didn't turn immediately this time. I stopped walking instead, standing very still in the cone of light from a street lamp, listening so hard my ears ached with it, the silence pressing against me like something physical. The footsteps stopped too. Of course they did, because they were never real, were they? I stood there for almost a full minute, not breathing, waiting for something that never came, my heart pounding in my throat so loud I was sure it could be heard from wherever they were watching. Then I started walking again, slower now, and the footsteps resumed, and when I turned this time, I saw something. Not a figure, not a person, but a darkness that was somehow darker than the darkness around it. A shape that didn't quite make sense against the painted sky, like looking at a photograph where reality had been slightly corrupted. Then it was gone, and I was alone with my own breathing and the distant hum of the highway and the absolute certainty that I had not imagined what I just saw. By the end of the first week, I'd stopped sleeping properly. Every creak of my apartment building, every settling pipe, every distant car door slamming, it all sounded like footsteps now, like something waiting for me to notice before it decided to make itself known. I would lie in bed and stare at the ceiling and think about the way that darkness had moved, the way it had seemed to fold into itself when I looked directly at it, like it was embarrassed to be caught existing, like it knew it wasn't supposed to be seen. That's a strange thought for a grown woman to have, I know, But there's something about being followed by something you can't explain that makes you question everything you think you understand about the world, about what's possible, about what you've been taught to believe is real. The second week brought new developments, and by developments I mean new horrors, new edges to the nightmare that was becoming my life. I started noticing that the footsteps weren't just matching my pace anymore, they were anticipating it. If I walked faster, they walked faster. If I stopped suddenly, they stopped. And the delay was almost non-existent, like the connection between our movements was direct and immediate. But here's the thing that kept me up at night. The thing that made me draw patterns on my notepad at 3 in the morning in the blue light of my phone screen. When I walked faster, the footsteps came slightly after my steps. When I slowed down, they came slightly before. It was like something was learning me, studying the way I moved through space, memorizing my patterns with the patience of something that had all the time in the world. I changed my route. I walked different streets, took different turns, went out of my way to confuse whatever was following me. Walking blocks I'd never walked before, just to try to lose it in the maze of Roswell's suburban sprawl. It didn't matter. The footsteps found me anyway, and they were always exactly where they should be, always exactly as close as they had been before. Like distance itself meant nothing to them. Like the geography of the city was just a suggestion they could override whenever they wanted. One night I walked the entire route backwards, just to see, starting from my apartment and heading to the bus stop instead of the other way around. And when I got home, I found a single footprint in the flour dust I'd tracked in from the kitchen. My apartment was locked. The windows were shut. I don't have a roommate. I live alone. And there was no way anyone should have been inside while I was gone. But that footprint was proof that something had walked through my kitchen while I was out walking in circles, trying to escape it. I called in sick the third Monday and spent the day cleaning my apartment from top to bottom, looking for evidence that someone had been inside, that there was a rational explanation for the impossible footprint I'd found the night before. I moved the furniture, checked behind the appliances, examined every window and door with the desperation of someone who needs reality to make sense. I found nothing, which somehow made it worse. Because the footprint was real. I wasn't imagining it. I could see the print right there in the dust. The shape of something that should have been a foot, but wasn't quite shaped right. Too long, too narrow. But there was no other sign of entry, no forced lock, no disturbed air, no explanation for how something had gotten into my home and stood in my kitchen while I was at work pretending everything was normal. I started thinking about all the times I'd felt watched at night, all the times I'd woken up with that strange sensation of not being alone in my own bedroom. And I wondered how long this had been going on. I wondered if it had always been going on, since before I noticed, since before I started working the late shift and walking home through streets I'd always walked before. I didn't sleep that night either. I sat in my living room with all the lights on and the TV playing some late-night show I wasn't watching, just to have some human sound, some proof that the world still contained normal things. And I listened, really listened, with everything I had. And somewhere around 2 in the morning, I heard it. Not footsteps this time, but breathing. Slow, steady, patient breathing from the corner of my apartment, where the shadows gathered thickest, where the light from the street lamp outside couldn't quite reach, coming from a darkness that had weight and presence and intention. I didn't call the police. What would I even say? There's something in my apartment making breathing sounds? They would think I was crazy, and maybe I was. Maybe the stress of working in a hospital where people come to die had finally broken something in my mind. But that didn't mean what I was experiencing wasn't real. I called my sister instead, and when she answered, I could hear in her voice that she'd been asleep, that I'd woken her from some deep and peaceful rest, and I felt a flash of envy so sharp it almost made me cry. Almost made me ask if I could come over and sleep on her couch, where something wouldn't be waiting for me in the dark. She asked if something was wrong, if I needed her to come over, and I said no, everything was fine. I just couldn't sleep. Just had some anxiety about work, nothing serious. She told me to try melatonin, told me maybe I was working too hard, and I wanted to scream at her that working too hard couldn't explain a footprint in a locked apartment, couldn't explain breathing in an empty room, couldn't explain the growing certainty that something was learning how to be me. But I didn't scream. I thanked her and hung up, and went back to listening to that breathing, which had somehow gotten closer, which was now coming from just behind my bedroom door, separated from me by nothing but a thin piece of wood, and the knowledge that something was on the other side, breathing in the dark, waiting for me to come out or give in to sleep or do something that would give it an excuse to stop waiting. There's something about a problem you can't solve that makes you start solving it wrong. I went to see Dr. Patterson at the hospital, not as an employee, but as a patient, and I sat in his office with its view of the parking lot and its smell of antiseptic hope and told him I wasn't sleeping, that I was having anxiety, that I thought I might be developing some kind of paranoid pattern that was making me see things that weren't there. He asked me to describe what was happening, and I did, leaving out the breathing because even I knew that part sounded crazy, making up stories about stress and too much coffee and worries about my sister, who didn't need worrying about. He prescribed me something for the anxiety and told me to take a few days off, and I nodded and thanked him and walked back to work, where I took x-rays of people's broken bones and watched their worried faces and thought about how easy they had it, how their problems showed up in the pictures, how you could point at something on a screen and everyone would agree it was real. I wished I could photograph what was following me. I wished I could take an image of my own terror and show it to someone and say, look, here it is. Here's proof that I'm not crazy. Here's evidence of the thing that won't leave me alone, no matter how fast I run or how many routes I try. So I tried. That night, I left work at my regular time. But instead of walking home, I stopped at the corner of Main and 5th and stood there under the flickering streetlight and waited, my phone in my hand, my heart pounding in my chest like it was trying to escape before the rest of me was ready. When the footsteps started behind me, and they always started, they always came, like they had a schedule they were determined to keep, I didn't run. I turned around and lifted my phone and took a picture, the flash going off in a burst of artificial light that blinded me for a moment and felt strangely like a dare. When my vision cleared, the sidewalk was empty and I was alone, and I felt like an idiot. Felt like one of those people who takes pictures of ghosts and ends up with nothing but empty photos and embarrassed smiles. But I checked the picture anyway, scrolling through my phone to find it. And when I found it, my blood went cold in a way that had nothing to do with the desert night. The picture showed the empty sidewalk, the street light, the darkness beyond the light's reach. But in the corner of the frame, just barely visible, there was something. Not a shape, not a figure, but a distortion, like heat shimmer, like the air itself was wrong, bending light in ways that light shouldn't bend when nothing was there to bend it. I zoomed in and tried to make it out, and that's when I noticed it. The distortion was in the shape of a person, standing exactly where I had turned around to take the picture, and it was watching the camera with something that looked horribly like attention, like it knew exactly what I was doing and was letting me do it, was letting me see what I could see. I stopped looking over my shoulder after that. I decided that if I never saw it, it couldn't hurt me, couldn't touch me, couldn't do whatever it was planning to do. And this was the lie I needed to survive. I walked home every night with my eyes forward, my jaw set, my hands in my pockets, refusing to give it the satisfaction of my fear, even as I felt it walking behind me with the same patience it had always shown. I thought I was winning at first. I thought maybe it was losing interest. The way you lose interest in a game where one side refuses to play. The way you eventually stop trying to get someone's attention when they refuse to look at you. Then I noticed the footsteps getting closer. Not faster, not more frequent, just closer. The space between us was shrinking, and I understood with horrible clarity that my strategy wasn't working, that my refusal to look wasn't making it go away, but was instead making it braver, emboldening it to come closer with each passing night, like a predator learning that its prey had gone blind. Last night was the worst yet. I was halfway home, standing at the crosswalk waiting for the light to change because, even in terror, I still followed the rules, still pretended that the world made sense when I felt breath on the back of my neck. Warm breath, slow breath, the same patient breathing I'd heard in my apartment, but closer now, so close it was practically part of me. So close I could feel the rise and fall of something that wasn't quite there. I didn't move. I couldn't move. The light changed, and I walked, and the breath came with me, keeping perfect pace with my steps, and I knew with absolute certainty that whatever was breathing on my neck was also taking those steps, was also moving through the world at exactly my speed for reasons I couldn't begin to understand. At the corner of Oak Street, I finally stopped, and I could feel it stopping too, standing just behind me, so close I could feel the displacement of air whenever it breathed out, that wrongness pressing against my back like a question I didn't want to answer. I said, without turning around, my voice barely a whisper in the desert air, "What do you want from me?" And the answer, when it came, was my own voice speaking from just over my shoulder, saying exactly what I was thinking in words I hadn't decided to say. "I want you to see me, Abigail. I want you to look. I want you to finally see what has always been there, what has always been walking behind you, what has always been waiting for you to turn around." But when I turned, there was nothing, just the dark street and the flickering light and my own reflection in a shop window, pale and terrified and utterly alone, staring back at me with eyes that seemed too far apart, mouth set in a line I didn't remember putting there. I went home and locked every door and sat in my bathroom with my back against the tub, door closed, lights on, phone in my hand with 911 already dialed but not sent. And I didn't sleep, and I don't think I'll sleep again until I understand what I'm being followed by, what wants me to see it. What happens when I finally stop running and let it catch up to me and show me whatever it's been trying to show me since I first heard those footsteps on that first night. The footsteps are outside my door right now. They're always outside my door now, even when I'm inside, even when I'm supposed to be safe. And tomorrow night, when I leave work, they'll be waiting for me on the sidewalk, and I'll have to decide. Do I keep pretending I don't see it? Do I keep walking with my eyes forward like I've been doing? Or do I finally turn around and look at the thing that's been walking behind me for so long, matching my every step, learning my every rhythm? I think I'm gonna look. I think I have to. I think it wants me to. And maybe that's the only way this ends. Maybe that's the only way I get answers to all the questions that are eating me alive. but I'm afraid of what happens when I do. Because when I turned around just now, just for a second, I saw not a figure, but an absence. A hole in the shape of something. A darkness that was darker than dark. And it was smiling with my smile, and looking at me with eyes that were my eyes, and it was saying with my voice that it had always been there, that it would always be there, that the only way to make it stop was to let it in. And the worst part, the part that makes me want to scream, is that when I saw my reflection in that window just now, it didn't move when I moved. It just stood there, smiling, and raised one hand in a wave that was somehow goodbye and hello at the same time. And I knew with terrible certainty that when I finally turn around to look at it, the thing behind me won't be the thing that's been following me all along. The thing behind me will be me.